Welcome to part 1 in this series, when Vegito turns Super Saiyan 4 in Dragon Ball Super. Now this story starts in an alternate timeline where Goku and Vegeta get along much better than they currently do, and that's not a slight to where their characters are now. I'm simply saying that they would actually be very good friends that don't really argue or bicker in this timeline like they do where we currently see them in Dragon Ball Super. Now, individually, they continue to get as strong as we know they are today, but the villains they face in this story are much stronger than what they would have faced in present Dragon Ball Super. So, with that being said, having to rely on fusion would be a much more of a factor for saving Earth and the universe as we know it. And before we get into it, make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe to the channel for weekly Dragon Ball Super discussion content and stories that I'll be doing more of like this that I'm coming up with myself for this year. So without further ado, let's get into it. Goku and Vegeta would go to Whis and ask him to mentor them on becoming stronger so that they can be the strongest fused warrior in all the Dragon Ball multiverse. And we understand that this obviously comes with a lot of responsibility and a lot of training. It's not just a matter of fusing and then calling it a day. We understand they have to get stronger in their individual forms, which will ultimately enable them to become stronger in their fused form. Now, Whis suggests that after Goku and Vegeta come to him asking for training, he suggested they use the Poteros to maximize their strength when they feel like they cannot beat an enemy. He said it would be a lot easier to rely on the Poteros as opposed of trying to do the fusion dance. Goku and Vegeta do inquire if the Potero fusion could ever be permanent. And if so, would this enable them to keep growing stronger as opposed to training in their individual bodies as they have done for all of their Saiyan lives? Whis explains that this is certainly a possibility, but he can't say for certain how the power output would affect them in the fusion using their Poteros. And essentially, that's kind of where they begin their journey. They have to figure out how to maximize their power in their individual forms, which is kind of where they are in Dragon Ball Super, right? Whis is still training them to maximize power in their base forms, because prior to doing anything else, they have to be as efficient as they can without relying on any transformations or any techniques. This is ultimately what's going to lead them to becoming one of the strongest fused warriors, not just in Universe 7, but in all the Dragon Ball multiverse, that will put them in a position of being able to handle some of the toughest opposition they will ever face in their Saiyan lives. And with all that background information being said, that's essentially where the story will obviously begin. First, to do a little bit of solo training, and then to figure out how they can maximize their power together, then using the Poteros in order to create the strongest fusion that they can obviously create. Now, if you're wondering about any other context in regards to other characters in this story, I decided to leave all that pretty much the same. Goku's still married to Chi-Chi, Vegeta's still married to Bulma. They still have their children. Again, the only difference is they get along much better, and I'm going to explain why that's the case in part 2. So that's where we'll leave off here for today. I don't know exactly how long this series is going to be. I already have a couple of parts scripted out, and I know how I want it to end, but I'll see once we get there. So make sure you guys, again, subscribe and stay tuned for more Dragon Ball discussion content. As far as stories like these, again, I will be dropping more of them, just kind of different things that maybe some of us have wanted to see happen in Dragon Ball Super that actually hasn't happened yet to this date. So part 2 will officially kick off their training and some more very important information as to explaining how Goku and Vegeta got to this point of essentially being best friends that don't have the arguing or, again, the bickering that we see them have in the current Dragon Ball timeline. Appreciate you guys for the love and support on the channel as always. If you haven't done so already, on top of subscribing, make sure to actually check out my first story. It's when Vegeta meets a Universe 6 Saiyan King. Should have that playlist here in the playlist section of the channel. Remember to put it in the description box and comment section below so you guys can go ahead and check that out. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you guys right now, but I will see you all later in part 2 when Vegito turns Super Saiyan 4 here in Dragon Ball Super. Goodbye.